viewpoints and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Scarefest Television. The original broadcast date, March 22nd, 2024, in the lead-up to Scarefest 16. Now, tonight's episode's a little different than what you're used to on the channel. Adam Green is our guest. The thing is, he could not do it tonight. We scheduled him, and then he had to back out. So what he graciously did is we have pre-recorded his interview. Now, since we were pre-recording it, I let Chad and Joanna handle it. Just to let them have the experience, however you want to look at it. So anyway, we do have the interview. It's coming right up. Joe Lewis will be on later with a Dampier review. And we have two celebrity announcements that will be dropping little past the bottom half of the hour. So let's go.
Wait to have you. I know there's a lot of hype already about you coming this year. We're excited. I mentioned it when we were introducing a while ago. I'm a huge fan of Holliston. Love a lot of your projects. I really am a big fan. So I'm excited to meet you in person and very excited to talk to you tonight.
Well, thank you for watching the stuff I make. I appreciate it.
Let's for the audience out there, let's kind of go back and get your history and how you ended up in this business and focusing on the horror genre. Was this something you started as a kid, or how did you lead yourself down the film highway?
It was kind of a combination of E.T. and just the holiday of Halloween. And so the first time I saw E.T., I was just absolutely blown away. And it was like the first time I actually thought about how they did it and how the movie was made. Like I had seen stuff on TV, like the making of Star Wars or whatever. I wasn't really that interested as much as I loved Star Wars and still do. But something about E.T., because like E.T. didn't look real to me for a second, yet myself and the entire audience was bawling at the end of it. And I was just like, how did they do this? So it was the first movie I ever saw in the theater twice. And the second time I was noticing the music, the fact that the kids actually spoke like, because I was Elliot's age when I saw that movie. So I decided that's what I want to do. And then every year, I know a lot of people deal with this, but once Halloween is over, I would deal with like pretty real depression, because even though it would be back again in another, not even year, it's usually like 9 months and it starts again. But I just love Halloween so much. And so watching horror movies was kind of like a way to keep it going year round. And thankfully, my parents didn't mind. They would check in every now and then and make sure I knew it was fake and wanted to know like why I wanted to watch people get murdered. You know, they were pretty good parents. But I think because I was trying to figure out how they did it, and I never thought it was real, it was just cool. I was never scared of Michael Myers or Freddy or Jason. Like I wanted to like meet them. I just thought they were awesome. And so that sort of started the whole thing. And I'm sure my parents would be like, we wish you picked anything else, because this is a brutal industry, as I'm sure you know, and many guests have said, but you have to be insane to do this. And I always tell people when they're like, I want to be a filmmaker too. I'm like, well, what would your backup be? And if they have an answer, that's what you should do. Don't do this. Absolutely don't. But if you're crazy and it's this or death, then absolutely fucking do it. Wait, can I say fucking? I just said it twice. Yeah. So, okay.
We're good. This is internet only. We have no ratings here. So I know that you fairly early on were following this path and took it seriously. I know one of the first things you did was coffee and donuts. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that and how that project came about?
Well, man, like I started off just making like little videos, editing in camera, like when I was a little kid. And then out of college, I got a job at Time Warner Cable in Malden, Massachusetts. So, like, when you're watching cable late at night and these local ad breaks come on, they usually start a few frames late. They always end with like the whole family and the staff waving in front of the store and like too many graphics. And that's what I was doing. But I was able to borrow the company's equipment at night and make my own stuff. So I had made a short film, not to like put into festivals or really show anybody. It was just for my Halloween dinner that I do every year. And so the short film was called Columbus Day Weekend because that was like the only holiday there wasn't a horror movie for yet. And in it, Jason and Michael Myers stalked the same group of people by mistake and then fall in love with each other. And it was really, really stupid, but no one was supposed to see it. Although that was the first time that we tried out doing the belt sander to the mouth gag that we later perfected in Hatchet. But it ended up getting passed around. And this is back when like everything was on VHS. And a few months later, I got an email from a guy at a talent agency, one of the biggest ones out here. And he recognized some of the actors in it and my name because he had gone to high school with me. And he's like, there's a bunch of agents here laughing at your short. You should really come out and take a meeting. But I didn't have any money. Like I was so broke. And so by the time I actually did come out here, they had moved on to this other short they were excited about with cardboard kids who swear a lot, which never went anywhere. I think it's called South Park, but no one's ever seen it. And so nobody even met with me. So I flew out here for nothing. But I'm like, well, everyone's saying now we need to make a feature. And my DP, who is still my DP 28 years later, is like, well, what is that? I'm like, it's like what we did, but longer. And not having access to actors or locations, I just sort of wrote my life story in that moment. And so the writer, the director, the editor, the star, like there were literally scenes where I would set up the camera and then get in front of it and do the scene. And we made the movie for $400 in 1999. Wow. And we had to edit tape to tape. So, because this was before digital editing was widely available. So every edit you made, that was it. Like you couldn't go back and change anything. And so I entered a film festival. It was just the first film festival that I saw coming up. It was the Smoky Mountain Film Festival, which is almost as big as like Sundance, but no one's ever heard of it. And we won Best Feature. And then I got signed by that agency and they're like, this should be a TV show. 13 years and 4 networks later, Holliston was born. So people are always like, how can I see Coffee and Donuts? If you've seen Holliston, you've basically seen it. I've shown it as a surprise a couple times, but the problem was we didn't know what we were doing. So there's copyright infringements all through it. Like I sing an Aerosmith song at one point. So it's not even like we could try to take the song out because I'm singing it. The t-shirt logos, like fucking Marilyn Manson everywhere and like Metallica and movie poster, like it would just be such a nightmare to try to ever put it out. So I've shown it when we do our podcast annual Yorkie-thon for the dog rescue. Back when we still did 48 hours live, I showed it at like 4 a.m. on the live stream, which most people had fallen asleep. So they were so pissed when they woke up and found out what we had shown. And then I did a screening here at the New Beverly of Frozen and then surprised everyone by playing Coffee and Donuts afterwards. So the deal is I just can't like promote a screening and let people know when it's going to happen. So, but really there's no need to see it. If you've seen Holliston, that's the better version of it anyway. But I know people are just sort of morbidly curious to see this $400 movie, which I should be much more proud of, but it got me here. So thanks to
that was my connection to it was through Holliston. So
yeah,
like I had mentioned, I very much enjoyed that series. And so I had researched it years ago when it was and found some of that backstory to it. And so I wanted to bring it up to you and talk to you about it tonight. But right now, I'm going to toss it over to Joanna.
So You are Mr. Hatchet. Yeah, so of course, whenever I was like, Adam Green, I was like, that's the Hatchet guy. Hell yeah, he's coming. So super awesome slasher franchise, huge cult following. So, and there are tons of familiar faces from the horror industry in your movies. And I know for part one, was Kane Hodder like your first choice to play Victor Crawley slash Mr. Crawley, or did he come to you and express interest? How did that work out?
He actually wasn't, only because I never thought in a million years that would happen. Because I had no way to get to him, and because I just figured he's already played an iconic slasher, and like I see this thing going for multiple films. He's probably, he's been there and done that. He's not going to be interested. And then because John Beekler, his shop was doing the effects, he's like, so what about Kane Hodder for Victor Crowley? I'm like, yeah, that would be great, John. And then he's like, well, I'm driving out to the set of Devil's Rejects and he's doing stunt coordination. So why don't I bring him the script? And I never expected to hear anything. And then like 3 days later, I get a call from Kane, and then we're sitting down to have dinner together. And when I went to meet with him, it was with two of the producers, and I'm loading all my fucking Jason stuff into the car. And I'm like, I want him to sign this. And they're like, no, don't do that right now. Don't do it right now. I still never have, actually. And he's like one of my closest friends at this point. I mean, he's literally been in every single thing I've ever made. But yeah, it was good timing, because he was at like not his lowest point. I think the burn accident was the lowest point, but he had just sort of unceremoniously lost the role of Jason for Freddy versus Jason, which to this day, no one will ever just say exactly what. Everyone's got a different story. There's an episode of the movie Crypt where we had Jeff Katz, who was the exec at New Line at the time. And I gave it to him so hard, because he was like, oh, well, Kane's Friday the 13th, when you look at them, they had diminishing returns. I'm like, what, because of him? Or was it because you sent him to fucking space and to Vancouver, New York? And anyway, so no one will ever give a straight answer. But not only that, but like right before we even started shooting, he had just turned 50, I believe, and then his mother died. And so like he just put everything he had into this. And it wasn't like overnight, because I'm like, I don't want Jason. Like, this is totally different. He's scared, he's jittery, he's unpredictable, he runs, he's, frantic. And once he did that, like the first time, just barreling out of the house at the old couple, like we all kind of knew, like, even if nothing more happened with it, at least Kane had something new now. And I just love that he has been Victor Crowley from the ground up. No one else has played that character for 4 films now, which is it's just amazing. I mean, I'm sure you guys have met him at some point. He's the greatest. He's just the best.
Yes, I agree. He's definitely the most expressive Jason, and like with all the movies, like with all the movements he makes, and I love that about him so much. He's awesome. We do love Kane.
And getting to let him act and show emotion and show everybody he's an actor, not just a stunt guy behind a mask. Look at his career since Hatchet. Like all the roles he's gotten to do now, not behind a mask or behind makeup. And he's gotten to do comedy. I mean, I even had him dancing in a movie. I gave him his first love scene in something. I think people were really kind of not expecting him to be so funny when they saw Holliston. And when we did season 2, and there was the whole joke how if anybody says Freddy versus Jason, he starts having seizures over it and doesn't realize he was recast because he's like waiting to get the call. I was worried when I sent him that script, and as expected, he's like, should I do this? And I'm like, once you do this, you take all the power away from anybody, because now you've made fun of it, and now it's yours and it's nothing. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And he just went for it. There was a scene where he breaks a plate over his head. I think it's a glass, and he sliced his whole forehead open. And the medic and everyone's like, oh shit, what do we do? And he's like, just someone, hey, production, bring me some super glue, and just glued his own head closed. And he's like, all right, let's keep going.
Awesome. Love it. That is awesome. I love that. It's so cool. So 4 movies in the franchise. Is there any chance for a 5th one?
That's the most asked thing I get. Either that or where's season 3 of Holliston or a sequel to Digging Up the Barrel. And there's always a chance. Most of us would really like to do it. Like the thing with this franchise is the same key people have been part of it for the whole thing. And I think that's something that has really set it apart. And we only do them when we really want to do them. And they're just made out of love. No one's doing it for the money. But we'll just say like the powers that be have made a lot of money. And we've never seen a penny. To walk into Target, because I was about to do a 5th one. And then the action figures came out. And this was like during the pandemic. And that should have been the proudest moment of my life. Because as a nerd, having an action figure of something you created, like that's like winning an Oscar. Like there's nothing better than that. And I'm standing there in Target and there were 2 different Victor Crowley action figures, and they're next to Jason and Michael Myers and Freddy. And then like the Marvel stuff is to the left and Star Wars is to the right. And I wanted to break every single one of them and burn the place down. And, you know, it's like the people in charge are making money off of that. Target, Walmart, all the stores are making money off of it. The guy who did the fucking licensing deal is making money. The company that made the toys is making money. Everybody reselling the money, like, and I own a good chunk of the franchise, but it hasn't made money yet. That's why there's 4 movies. That's why there's Halloween Mass. That's why, and none of this is new. Everyone's heard this stuff before. It happened to Romero. It happened to Wes. It happened to Sean. But it's just like when you're making something for the love of it, and it's just a little cult thing, great, awesome. But when it becomes as big as this has, and they still, because they know unless you have enough money to actually come after them, they're never gonna, like, they just, Frozen made even more money than Hatchet. And they were celebrating at the Tech Scout that the movie had made money before we even started shooting it, just off of the script. But, you know, number 2 movie on Hulu again, just like 2 winters ago. That movie's way bigger than anything else I've done. Hasn't made any money yet. So that's really, if I'm being totally honest, because then people go, oh, it's all about the money. It's not about that. It's just about, at some point you have to stop being taken advantage of. So I've said many times, go make one without me. Then they know that would probably not be a good idea, because Kane wouldn't come back. Danielle wouldn't come back. Nobody would. So all they need to do is treat us fairly. That's it. But like that last one had to be shot in 11 days for 400 grand. That was it. And I was like, this is never going to work. And then review wise and critically, it's like neck and neck with the first one. And so they're like, see, no one needs to get paid. No one needs to. And it's not about like making a ton of money. I know I'm never going to get what I'm owed, but just stop treating us so terribly. But we'll see. We would like to do it sooner than later, because Kane's like 125 now. But yeah, we would like to do one at some point, but I just have other stuff that I'm more passionate about at the moment. But I also wouldn't tell you, like, it could be done and I wouldn't tell you. So just like the last one, to surprise everybody like that, or with Digging Up the Marrow, nobody knew that was coming. Holliston, nobody knew what that was till they saw it. I have an issue with overhyping shit before it comes out, which is really funny, because I made the mistake of clicking on a podcast link where 2 guys in their basement were reviewing Victor Crowley, and they're like, you know, the hype for this one was just so, what hype? You didn't even know, no one knew, like it just suddenly was there. But I just think it's more fun as fans once you hear about something and you can see it, as opposed to a year of set visits and photos that don't really show you anything, and then a teaser, and then another teaser, and then a trailer for the trailer. And then, so it's not always up to me, but if it is, I would much rather people not know what I'm doing and then just have it.
The Bombs is a 2024 Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendor. The Bombs makes bath and body products for everyone. Ashley Dobbs makes unique small batch hand-painted bath bombs, plus sugar scrubs, whip soaps, and body oils. Find the Bombs on Facebook and at the monthly Central Kentucky Mystical Market in Lexington. Scarefest Weekend sponsoring vendors make the event happen. Be sure to tell them that you heard it here on Scarefest TV.
Yeah, I definitely love that, hearing about the Victor Crawley's surprise at a film fest. What was that? Was it 2018 or 17ish? And then that was awesome. The fans went nuts.
Well, the way we did that, which I still can't believe it worked, because for 2 years we had to keep that under wraps. The movie was called, so my dog's name is Arwen. It was called Arwen's Fancy Dinner, just so nobody would care about it. But of course, when that leaked, every actor I've ever met was calling like, "Oh my God, this sounds amazing." I'm like, "Really? My dog's fancy dinner? That sounds amazing. I would be perfect for," like they're doing what they have to do. Like that's what actors do, unfortunately. But then we held a 10th anniversary screening of Hatchet here in Hollywood. And we just said, we're going to show deleted scenes that no one's seen before. And by like 10 a.m., there were already people in line for a 7 p.m. screening. And then we had the original cast all show up and do the carpet. They knew what was going to happen, but you totally thought that that's what it was. And then when I introduced it, and my introduction was way too long, but it was super emotional. And then suddenly to say, so tonight you're actually about to see a new Victor Crowley, a new Hatchet movie. And the audience just went crazy. And then we were trending like number 5 on Twitter worldwide. And then the tour started literally the next day. And so I went to like 56 cities, I think. And that was the way to do it. And just to see it in a theater full of fans who love this stuff, and then, go to video. Because the problem now with streaming, which, look, I use it, we all use it, it's great, it's convenient, but everything's just a thumbnail now. And like people just click on, you don't even see people get that excited about too many things anymore. They're always like, yeah, it was okay. But they watch like 5 things a night, like half watch them maybe. So as long as I can still bring my stuff to theaters, which I'm so grateful that everything I've made has had some sort of theatrical release. Not everybody gets that. Even festivals, like to see your work on a big screen with an audience, like that's why you do it. That's the drug, is those laughs or those cheers or those screams. Like that makes all the suffering worth it.
You talked about Kane breaking a glass over his head. So one of my favorite things to hear about is kind of like behind the scenes moments. So is there one, like you have a favorite behind the scenes moment, even like a blooper?
Oh my God. There's so many. But okay. Well, as far as a blooper goes, because normally I will just keep the bloopers in, like whatever is the most entertaining thing. There's a scene in Holliston where I just couldn't stop laughing. And we did eventually shoot it correctly, but we left the version in where even someone in the audience was yelling, "You've got this, Adam." And Joe goes, "Did that help?" And like, we left the whole thing in, and the network was like, "What, is this a mistake?" And I'm like, "It's funny. Like people love seeing this. So just leave it." I mean, the show breaks the fourth wall all the time anyway, so why not? But as far as a blooper goes, so with Victor Crowley, we only had like one take of most things, especially with effects stuff. And so there's a scene that we call the ultimate fisting, where Kane rips Felissa Rose's arm off and then shoves it up her dress, and then her hand comes out her mouth. And so we only had one shot at it. And so we practice it and practice it. So then we go, and Kane rips her arm off, and the blood's pouring everywhere. And framed directly in between them is Robert Pendergraft, the makeup effects guy, pumping the blood, just smiling. And we're like, "Oh, fuck." And so we didn't have doubles of wardrobe. I mean, it was so low budget. So we ended up just flipping her. She was wearing like a shawl. We just like turned it inside out. I think maybe we cut a new hole in it or something so we could go again. But ooh, that was bad. Another blooper that you won't see in I don't think I'm supposed to be talking about this yet, but there's like a Ultimate Collection Hatchet set coming very soon.
Oh, yeah.
And there's 2 hours of new stuff with it that I put together personally. And so the story is there with like the footage. But in Hatchet 3, there's a scene where a rocket launcher gets shot at the Crowley house and it explodes in this giant explosion. So obviously you only get one shot at something like that. And so everything's ready. We had 3 different red cameras pointed at it. And so it happens. The explosion is huge. I mean, like you felt it in your chest. Like it was like there's no CG or anything. Like that's what happened. And we're cheering and stuff. And so after a shot like that, the cameras have to check in. And so it went camera 1, no good. What? All right. Camera 2, no good. Camera 3, no good. So the concussion was so massive. And so to any filmmakers watching this, if you're going to shoot an explosion that big, don't shoot on the drive inside the camera, shoot to a external hard drive. So all of the hard drives, as soon as the explosion started, they all just shut off. And we're like, I don't even know how you fixed it. Like, we can't build the house again and blow it up. Like, we can't, like, what are we going to do? And Will, the DP, is just wandering around and he walks over and he's like, yeah. So before we shot, I took 5 little GoPros and I just sort of set them up all over the place because I don't know, I thought it would be cool. So when you watch the movie and no one has ever caught it, it's all just consumer GoPros when the house explodes.
Oh, wow.
But what, like, and that's why I always shoot with Will. There's only one thing I've ever shot in my life without Will, and because he just couldn't be there. But I mean, it was literally like a miracle that he did that. He even put a camera inside the house that got blown up in the house, and we couldn't get the footage off of that one, unfortunately. But then I still think, like, as far as favorite moments go, even though it's not a blooper because you see it in the movie, when in the first Hatchet, when Kane is lying on top of Joel David Moore, in the original script, Victor Crowley was just supposed to drool, and Joel was going to turn his face away, kind of like Alien, where it was going to like touch his cheek. And then knowing that Kane can throw up on cue, I was like, Joel, would you be okay? Because you're going to throw up in a few minutes in the movie. What if he just throws up in your mouth? And Joel's like, fuck it, just do it. And so Kane swallowed, it was Mountain Dew and KY, and then threw up in Joel's mouth. And several people, and it's, I mean, that's what you see in the movie. And Joel even blows a bubble out with it. I have another bubble story too. And then several people on set threw up watching. And then later, it was a few nights later where we shot the scene right after that, where Joel comes running and throws up. And he and I both agree we hate when actors fake vomit in movies because you can tell their mouth was full of something. So he's like, give me something that'll make me throw up. And so they made him drink orange juice and clam chowder. And in the movie, you see, I mean, it's undeniable that he really throws up because he comes running in a wide shot right up to the camera and then pukes. And he threw up on BJ McDonald, who was the camera operator. He threw up on his feet, and then makeup threw up, wardrobe threw up. It was like Stand By Me. Everyone was puking, and I'm just in the middle like, yes. It was just, you know, as much as it is hard, when you have moments like that, you just laugh forever. And we're all just idiot little kids. So to watch your friend throw up like that is really funny.
Tuesday's Crypt features deals with talents in the horror community, from mask makers, sculptors, artists, and more. Plus, podcast Live in the Crypt, shooting the shiz with BK and the Swag, and BK and the Bees, Horror Buzz. Visit their website, join their Facebook group, and thank them for being a Scarefest sponsoring vendor.
Are you a fan of horror movies, books, comics, music, and collectibles? Roomorg magazine is for you. Subscribe today to receive 6 or 12 print issues annually and join me, executive editor Andrea Subisati, on an ongoing journey through the horror genre of the past, present, and future. Plus, get access to unmissable special editions such as A Century of Witches, 50 Years of Gore Cinema, British horror movies, and so much more. Roomorg, the world's premier horror and culture and entertainment magazine since 1997. Accept no substitute.
Hey, since we're talking Hatchet tonight, let's have a warm welcome for Perry Shin. Perry Shin from Hatchet 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think, I'm damn near all of them, is coming to Scarefest weekend. And we welcome back, they used to come on their own nickel. Grim Life Collective has gotten a little traction in the stardom arena, so they're coming as Scarefest guests. Yes, the Grim Life Collective. You can find them on YouTube. Follow them on Facebook, the Grim Life Collective. While we're talking Scarefest weekend staff, hey, if you want to volunteer for Scarefest this year, go to scarefestweekend.com, fill out the application there, and join us on the volunteer staff. Plus, if you consider yourself an authority or you're just well-versed on any topic that you think would appeal to us, hey, the weirder the better. Scarefest Weekend is looking for speakers. So go to the website, scarefestweekend.com, fill out the speaker application link, and we'll take a look at it. That is ending in just another month or two. And our film festival is rolling right along with the Scarefest Horror Film Festival. If you are or you know a independent filmmaker who would like to enter, who might have something on the books to get into us before October, we are taking submissions. Go to scarefestweekend.com and click the film festival link. Hey, and we do have our first entry. We finally are getting entries now into our pass contest on scarefestradio.com. If you'd like to win a pass, it can be a weekend plus pass. It may be a weekend pass. We'll give away day passes just for writing stuff down. And if we have a viral video submitted, we're going to give you a golden VIP pass. Details are at scarefestradio.com. There's a banner and a link, scarefestradio.com. The Lions Club Run for Sight is coming up April 6, 2024. And I, your loyal host, is running my first 5K of 2024. This is after smoking for 41 years, so give me a break. But anyway, Lions Club Run for Sight, I want to give special thanks to Barbara Jane for sponsoring that outing. Now, if you'd like to sponsor me a little bit, hey, look at this. I have 52 sponsors on my Patreon project. 52. That will get me that cosplay. I'll be chopping up my Camp Arawak shirt on the air, probably the episode that we do highlighting FrankenCon. But anyway, Sleepaway Camp cosplay is now going to be a thing. But as soon as you get me to 100 members, I am going to do that cosplay with a temporary tramp stamp, just so you know. Patreon.com/ScarefestRadio. People, it's 25 cents a week. 25 cents a week. That's like less than cost to feed a kid in Ethiopia. So hey, check it out online. Patreon.com/ScarefestRadio. $1 a month will get you in the door.
Well, we're right back here with Adam and Joanna. Adam, you teased right before we went to break that there was another bubble story. So I'm going to throw it right back into you and let you share a little more.
Okay. To some people, this one's actually grosser. I don't think so. I think having someone throw up in your mouth is about as gross as it gets. But in the first season of Holliston, there was a scene where it's the four main people, so myself, Laura, Joe, and Corey, where Joe is chewing a piece of gum. Laura says she's hungry, so Joe spits out the gum and gives it to her, and it's watermelon bubblicious. Now, why we didn't think to just use like mint gum or something that was also green? No. And so he spits it out. Laura starts chewing it. Then my character walks out, and I'm like, is that my gum? And so she spits it into my hand, and I start chewing it. And then what was supposed to happen was Corey then mentions she's hungry, and I'm like, you want some gum? And I spit it out, and then she starts chewing it. So on the Blu-ray, you can see the scene as a oneer, so everyone can see we really did it. It wasn't hidden in cuts or anything. I mean, we couldn't because we were in front of a small audience. But for some reason, at the end of the scene, when Corey was like, oh, I'm hungry, and I'm like, you want some gum? She just opened her mouth and pointed. And remember, it's like a 9-minute scene, I think. I haven't seen it in years, but it's a long scene. And if I had screwed this up, we would have had to do the whole thing again. And so I just spit the gum at her. She caught it in her mouth and then turns around and blows a bubble as we walk out. And you can hear people who were there in the audience just going, oh my God, they were so sickened by it. And so we were going to one-up it in season 3 by sharing a toothbrush and passing that around. But like, those are my 3 closest friends probably in my life. And so to us, like, it's nothing. And I think that's part of the reason why the show works so well. Like, the chemistry between us was so authentic and real. But that was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And I don't know why I wrote it or made them do it, but thank God they did.
Well, that's one of the things, and that transition's really, really great into one of my next questions. Throughout your projects, you work with a lot of the same people. Has that happened organically, or was there a group of people when you started out, and you kind of touched on it with getting Kane into Hatchet? Was there a group of people that you kind of had on a bucket list that you've kind of put together, or is it just you've worked on projects through the years and really got attached to the people? Because it's refreshing, I think, that there's loyalty, at least from the outside. It looks like there's loyalty there, that when you have a project that the same people tend to be involved. It also says a lot about you that they want to be involved again. But like I said, I enjoy kind of seeing the same group move through these projects. So can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
It really sort of happened organically. And I'm very fortunate that most people, once they work on an Ariscope project, they don't leave and they just want to stay. And so, like, unfortunately, there isn't always an appropriate role for everybody. There's still a lot of friends and from the horror world that I need to get into stuff. There just hasn't been the right thing yet. Yeah, but it really happened organically. In the beginning, there were 3 of us. It was myself, Will Barrett, and Sarah Elbert, who produced all the Hatchet films, and Holliston. And there's actually, so that I don't talk for another 30 minutes before you get a chance to ask a question, it's free on the Ariscope YouTube channel or on the Ariscope website. But so we do a Halloween short film every year. This past Halloween was our 25th year, which is insane. Some of them have been really huge. Like Jack Chop did like 1 million views in a few days. Some of them are great. Some of them, we finished them. But there's a documentary that we put out on right before the 20th one came out, because I wanted to end that tradition at 20. I feel like 20 years of doing an annual Halloween short film is enough. But everyone's like, no, we got to go to 31. Ugh. So 6 more years. But there's a documentary, and even though it's only about the Halloween shorts, it's really touching. It's really funny. It's inspiring. But that shows the whole story of how everybody became a family member. And again, like, my movies are only worth watching because of the people I work with. Like, I might lead the ship or come up with the stuff or write it, but without my crew and my cast, like, it would be nothing. Like, I'm so lucky that I get to work with the people that I work with. And that's not just me like trying to sound humble. Like it is 100% true.
Well, and you have certainly surrounded yourself with some greats. So, but tying that back to Holliston again. So, how did Dee Snider and Dave Brocky get involved? Because they really made the show.
So if anyone's interested in hearing the full Dee Snider story, I promise you it's like the best story you'll ever hear, but it takes 9 minutes to tell it, so I won't do it here. I did a series called Scary Sleepover. Again, it's free on YouTube. Dee Snider was the season 2 finale. In the series, different celebrities come here and have a slumber party with me. I really am just a little kid. But anyway, how I ended up becoming friends with him is the craziest, longest, like it was over like a 20-something year period. But I grew up just same summer that I saw E.T. was when I discovered Twisted Sister, and I just always looked up to him. And again, watch the story. I promise you it's one of the best stories you'll ever hear. But so he's always been not just like a friend, but like a mentor and stuff. The first time I got married, he actually officiated my wedding. And so I knew I wanted him for Lance Rocket. I always wanted him for Lance Rocket because Holliston was originally developed as a TV series in 2003 for UPN. If anyone remembers that network, it was sort of like known as like the Urban Network then, but they always were like, no, we're going to start doing more stuff. And Disney Touchstone was the studio and Tom Shadyac was producing it. And back then, their only thing when they bought it was like, you and your friends cannot be in it. And I'm like, understood. And they're like, who do you want? And I'm like, I want this guy, Zach Galifianakis, and this dude, Kevin Hart, to be Adam and Joe. And they were like, absolutely not. No one knows who they are.
That's quite a skill for identifying talent you have there.
But remember, I was repped at an agency that repped them. So I was seeing their reels and their stuff. And like, they were both already starting to get out there. They just weren't like household names. Like, it's not like I knew they'd be household names. I just knew they were really funny. Anyway, so what was the question? Oh, right. And so then back at UPN, they made me get rid of the alien in the closet, who I knew I wanted odorous, but I couldn't say that because as soon as you start saying guar in a Hollywood pitch, they're like, what is that? And then they look it up and they're like, this is too little. So
especially if Disney's involved.
Yeah, although they were just the studio, which was really Touchstone, which is owned by Disney. So Disney never said anything about the script or anything. Ultimately, right when I turned in the script, there was a merger between UPN and the WB to form the CW. So all the development was shelved. For 5 years, they held it. So I couldn't do anything with it. So then I went on to make Hatchet and Spiral and produce Grace. And right after making Frozen, I got the rights back. And then there was a network called G4, which was sort of like the nerdy gaming network. They really wanted to do something with me. I'm like, how about this? And Joe Lynch and I will be in it. And they were like, this is great. And then there was a merger, and then they became Esquire, I think. So that didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, FearNet, which I thought was just a website back then, they're like, no, we're a cable network, and we're going to be in like 80 million homes by spring. I think they were in like 12 million homes by spring. But regardless, we got to do the show that we wanted to do. So when I first met with Dave, people pitch him stuff all the time. Same thing with me. Like, it's never real. Like, they don't really have the money, or the money falls through, and it's not their fault. I don't think they're lying. It just, that's the business. So Dave was so excited that he would be in like a mainstream show and a sitcom at that. He's like, I never imagined this would happen. And he just didn't believe it would happen. And so when it did happen, and there's, I've been watching a lot of Dave stuff because Saturday is going to be 10 years that he's gone, which is insane. But there was, I think you can see it in the behind the scenes on season 2, but he actually walks up to the behind the scenes camera and says in his real voice, even though he's in the odorous costume, this show's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And that's like, I mean, what's more of a compliment than that? And I'm still pretty tight with most of the guys in Guar and everything. I'm so happy that they found a way to go on. It's just, yeah. But again, like, life just throws the weirdest stuff at you. So like 2014, I think it was 2014. So we were doing a third season. And the whole thing is, if we got a third season, then the budget had to double. So none of us cared about getting paid. We just wanted to do more episodes. And so season 3 was written. And then Dave died. My wife left me later that week. And then there was a merger between Time Warner and Comcast, I believe, and FearNet got dissolved. And so that really just sent me into a downward spiral after that. Like I didn't want to make anything anymore. I didn't want to do anything. Like all I ever wanted to do was Holliston. That was why I came here. That was the main thing. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. Obviously having a bigger budget would have been great, but I got to cast whoever I wanted. I got to do whatever I wanted. Like the network really stayed out of it, especially starting with season 2. They just let me go. So yeah, to have it just suddenly go away, especially after that cliffhanger, but we knew we were getting a third season. So we weren't worried, but you know, who could have predicted?
And I'm going to make the mistake of never asking a question you're not sure the answer, but I believe you were involved in the Guar documentary too, weren't you?
I think I'm in it for like 5 seconds.
Okay.
They did like a 2-hour interview with me, and I was like, man, I have a lot to say. And if I don't say it now, I don't think there's going to be 2 Guar documentaries. And like, I wasn't ready. They'd originally floated the idea of me doing the documentary like 2 years before that. But I'm like, I can't be objective. And I still was in such a bad way over Dave, like to sit there looking at footage of him day in and day, like it wasn't healthy. So I gave the most like just honest, heartfelt interview ever. And then I'm in it for like 3 seconds. But I think that makes sense because when you see the documentary, it's not about Dave, it's about Guar. And all my stuff was, other than like how I became a Guar fan, my stuff was so specifically Dave. So if I was the director being objective, I probably would have cut it out too. I was just surprised they didn't show anything from Holliston because I had to jump through all these hoops to like get them clearance to use whatever footage they wanted, like pictures and all that stuff. And they didn't even mention it. So, but it's in the Guar book. So I'm happy with that.
Trick or Treat Studios is a Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendor. Trick or Treat Studios is the one-stop shop for high-quality Halloween and horror. Shop masks, costumes, figures, collectibles, games, and more from your favorite movies. Find Trick or Treat Studios online at trickortreatstudios.com.
Hey, Scarefest fans, my hair is truly outrageous. Hold on. Don't want to upset Wes. There we go. Anyway, we'll get that under control. My hair's just getting bigger. This week's movie was a chore. It was hard to watch, and it sucked so bad. How bad did it suck, Joe? Well, I can't say because this is a PG-13 show. And this week's movie is called Dampier, or Dampier, however you want to say it. And it's based on an Italian comic book of all things, which is different to me. And it's on Netflix. Came out in 2023. It's a kind of a big movie. It's shot in English and Italian, but the Italian's a little dubbed. It's weird. So this terrible movie called Dampier, based on an Italian comic book, like I said. The opening's okay. Somewhere back in the day, these nuns are trying to have this lady help her birth a baby. She's of course having a hard time, and there's some sort of demon vampire out there they're trying to stop because you think it's his son, but it's not, and you find out all this stuff later, and they're trying to stop it. Cut to several. The opening kind of okay. I enjoyed it. It's kind of my old kind of thing. Cut to, I don't know. It takes place in the 1990s. I don't know when that scene takes place because you never kind of explains. And it takes place during the Balkan War in the Balkans. And these soldiers are out and they get attacked by vampires. And then we start to follow another character named Harlan. And Harlan's the little boy, and he goes around with his buddy, who's a con man, faking to rid town of vampires through the Balkans. However, he actually has vampire blood, and he is something that we call as a Dhampir, who can actually kill vampires because he's half human, half vampire. And there's a other great vampire, the one that tried to kill him with his baby, who's now trying to kill him, but he's trying to make him chase him. It makes no sense. If this sounds confusing to you, it's because it's confusing to me too. It's not good. And it, worst of all, and I get that it's based on an Italian comic book, which I've never read. Maybe the comic book's amazing. I don't know. I only eat Italian. So it may be easier to understand if you've read the comic, but as a just general movie person, Dhampir is damn near unwatchable. Okay? He finally fights the big baddie at the end. Of course, he wins, yada, yada, yada. I don't know why, he just basically chokes him out. Some of the dialogue in this is just dreadful. I mean, it was written by Mrs. Johnson's third grade class, as my friend James Thomas would say. It's just dreadful. And then they set it up for a sequel. I hate it. Some movies did that correctly, some not. It's just set up for a sequel. So should you watch 2023's Dhampir on Netflix? No, not unless you just like vampires trying to look sexy doing this. That's what they do. It's awful. Don't watch it. It's a terrible movie. This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly. Toodles.
Horror fans, we love practical effects. Most of us prefer practical effects over CGI. So now that I get a chance to speak to like a creator, an artist, I kind of want to know your opinions or how you feel about practical effects versus CGI.
Obviously, I'm a big practical effects guy. That's all I've done. But I'm not opposed to CG if it's good. I think when things work best is when you start with something practical and then just use a little bit of digital to fix things up or improve it if need be. But we went through this awful phase really in the 90s and early 2000s when they were doing full digital characters that just looked like cartoons, like those movies for the most part don't hold up. So especially if you're doing horror, like if it's a slasher, everyone's going to know if it's fake blood, or like fake as in animated. You know, we want to see practical effects. Like we were like the generation where like Savini and Rob Bottin and Rick Baker, those were like rock stars. Like everyone knew who they were. Everyone wanted to be them. So, yeah, I'm sort of always going to be more practical than CG, but it depends what it is. Obviously, if you're doing like an outer space sci-fi thing, there's going to be digital. But these days, a lot of it does look fantastic. I thought Godzilla -1 was amazing, and I know they did a combination of things, but that almost felt like the first time seeing Jurassic Park. It was so good. So yeah, practical is obviously hard on a lower budget because you really get one shot at it. Because even if it's just like a blood splatter, the cleanup time and then needing a double of that outfit and the reset to do it again can take 2 hours, and you only have a few hours a night to shoot to begin with. So you really got to get it right. The very first time that we tried the jaw rip in Hatchet 1, which Robert Pendergraft, who was John Buechler's shop foreman, he's the one who did that. And like, that was the moment we were all waiting for. Like, if that looked as good as I kept telling everyone it would, everyone knew we had something. And, it's a complicated thing to do because I tried to make it seem like one shot. Like there's one frame of black in Kane's back, and that's where we had the cut around to the dummy. But it's very shocking because you don't see a cut, and you know by that point the whole movie's practical. So it's like, how did they do that? And so great to hear from other effects artists all the time asking that. Most of them can figure it out if they just go frame by frame. But regardless, the face ripped and then the wrong blood tube was put in. So instead of spraying blood, it was a hose that just went bleh, and it was just silence on the set. And like when something goes well, I'm screaming and yelling, check that shit, and like partying. So when it was silent, and of course the sun was already coming up, the birds were chirping, and like that was it. And so Robert stayed awake all day building another head. And then he came back and did it, and it worked the second time. But we didn't know because the lighting had changed and stuff. Like, is this even gonna still feel like a oneer? But it did, and it worked. But yeah, practical can be tough. I just love that there's still so many people doing it, and not just because they can't afford CG. Like, it's a choice to do it. Look at the Terrifier movies and what Damien's doing. Like, and he's an effects artist. Like, that dude is fucking great, man. He's writing the stuff, directing it, he's doing the effects. And I'm just happy there's another modern fucking slasher, man, because it's been lonely. Like, I was hoping Leslie Vernon from Behind the Mask, because that movie did festivals with Hatchet, and they would often program them together like brother and sister movies. Like, Leslie Vernon dissects and turns horror movies on their heads, and Hatchet celebrates them and turns them up to 11. And so in Hatchet 2, there's a reference to Leslie Vernon because they were supposed to do a sequel, and eventually they were going to meet in some capacity. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I want to see Terrifier keep going, and maybe Victor Crowley will have somebody to fight at some point. There's nothing planned like that or anything yet, but I just love seeing something succeed, and it's awesome.
Yes, that would be awesome. I never thought about that. But so switching gears, I think I see Dee Snider in your records down there, actually. Twisted Sister. Very, very awesome album. Am I correct?
Yes, I think I have probably 20 something Twisted Sister records at this point, because I have all the singles. I have like everything. Like, they'll always be like my band. So yeah, I got to go with them for like 4 or 5 of the dates on their like 40 and Fuck It tour when they like said farewell. So I got to go to like Sweden and France and like see them play these giant festivals as the headliner in front of like 100 or 150,000 people. And in Europe, they know every Twisted Sister song, not just We're Not Gonna Take It. So I get why that's how they wanted to go out. But to be standing on that stage, like, we've all seen footage of those giant festivals, but like the experience of a lifetime, like, just unbelievable. So great. So great.
Oh wow, I couldn't even imagine. So I feel like with horror and like heavy metal rock, I feel like they just kind of go hand in hand. Like, you can't have one without the other. It's like peanut butter and jelly. So, and then when I was researching a little bit more about you, I learned about your band Haddonfield. Would that be okay if you spoke a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'd had like a band in high school, like most people do. And then that members of that same band, when we would be home from college, we made this like punk band called The Mighty Heroes Part 2. I don't know if people remember The Mighty Heroes, but it was like a short cartoon during Mighty Mouse. There was like Tornado Man and Rope Man. Like, no, most people don't know it. But that was sort of a joke. And then I sort of figured that was it with playing in bands. But when I was working at Time Warner in Malden, I went to get my haircut at this place, and the Mighty Heroes had just done a show. So I had no voice left because it was just punk. So I was just screaming. And this guy's like, he had the worst Boston accent. And he's like, yeah, kid, what's wrong with your voice? I'm in a band. We're looking for a singer, dude. Kid. And his name was Nicolo, which is where the character comes from in Jack Chop and Holliston. And I was like, I guess I'll come by, but like I don't know. And I go by, and his band was him. He was a drummer, and that was it. He's like, let's just jam. I'm like, you can't jam without. But then another dude happened to walk in who was I think it was like, it might have been a drug deal. I'm not sure what was happening. But when he left, he like temporarily left. And Nicola was like, that's John Rabbit. He's like one of the best guitar players ever, but we don't want to work with him. And I'm like, well, if he's one of the best guitar players ever, I want to hear it. And John Rabbit walks in with his whole rig that he happened to have in his guitar, in his truck. And he and I are just like, I don't know, sizing each other up. I'm like, bullshit, this guy's the best guitar player. He still to this day is one of the best guitar players I've ever heard in my life. And he taught himself by watching music videos of like Eddie Van Halen and Slash frame by frame and looking where they put their fingers. He'd only been playing for 2 years and he could play Eruption like flawlessly. He's finger tapping behind his head. And I'm like, that dude, like if I'm going to be in a band, it's got to be with that guy. Nobody else. And Nicole was like, no, kid, you don't want to. Anyway, so we got rid of Nicole over it pretty quick and put the band together. And you know, everyone thinks their band was good, but we were really good and we were going places. At least it felt like it, because there was like a club in Salem, Massachusetts called Bleachers, which hasn't been there for years, but it was huge, especially the upstairs. It was almost like a little like shed almost, or like a theater. It held a lot of people. And there were nights where like we couldn't believe how many people there were and that they knew the words of the songs. And like Powerman 5000 had just taken off from there. Godsmack had just taken off from there. And it seemed like we might be the next ones to go. And then Coffee and Donuts got picked up by UTA out here, and I had to make a decision. Do I stay with this or do I, you know, and I definitely chose the right path. But unfortunately in a band, you have to rely on other people. You can't just rely on yourself. Mm-hmm. And there was just things going on with some of the other guys where I just didn't see it going all the way. And unfortunately, there's times have been tough back there. And like one of them passed away just a few years ago. But we did get back together again. I think it was 2017. It was like the same year that Victor Crowley came out. So during the Movie Crypt, my podcast, during Yorkie-thon, which is live for 48 hours, people in the chat were asking, can we ever hear your band? And I never wanted to play it because we didn't professionally record anything. We only had live recordings and they're soundboard recordings. So in some of them, the audience is like overpoweringly loud. And then other ones, you literally can't hear the audience at all. And it sounds like we're playing in front of nobody. So I didn't want to play any of that stuff. But I was like, if we reach $5,000 in the next hour raising money for the dogs, I'll play a Haddonfield song. And so I did. And then a few hours later, I played another one. Little did I know who was out there listening. And then the next thing I know, Dave Ellefson from Megadeth, he had a company called EMP. He might still have it. I'm not really sure what's going on with him now. But they're like, we should put this out. And so we got to put a record out. I mean, it was live songs, but I mean, it's a real live record. The only thing about it is because some of the songs had this massive audience and some of them didn't, we just had to add a layer of audience so it would sound like one show. But other than that, we couldn't, it was on an analog tape, so we couldn't even adjust levels. Like, I think my vocals are too loud. I think the guitar is too quiet, regardless. But to actually have a record and have it, like, I still sign them all the time at conventions and stuff. And I don't know, I'm just happy the music got out there, but it was such a big part of my life. And I never talked about it much because, I don't know, because everyone was in a band and they were usually in a cover band. They were in a band in high school or their band sucked. So I just don't want to sound like that guy. And so I never brought it up. But when Spencer from Ice Nine Kills first came by here to do the podcast, he's from the area. He knew me as the singer from Haddonfield before he even knew I made movies. And so I'm looking at Joe and I'm like, see, it was a real thing. I swear to God.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. I mean, y'all played some pretty big shows though, didn't you? With some other, like some big headliners. So I was like, wow, this is awesome. Pretty cool.
Did. We got, when the record came out, we got to do a reunion show at the Worcester Palladium. And I think it was like, I don't remember who all was on the bill. I know Ministry was there, Devil Driver. We played earlier on. But there was like, it was a ton of people, and in the front was all the old Haddonfield shirts and stuff. Like, people remembered. I'm like, how are they even going to know we're doing this? It was great, but we were used to playing with a like show and our own sound guys and lights. And when you're doing a festival style lineup, you're just thrown out there with a sound guy who doesn't know the songs. I think the sound guy did fine, but there were no monitors on the stage. So until I saw it from someone's phone, I thought it was the worst thing that could have ever possibly happened because I couldn't hear myself at all. And one of the members was once again on drugs. And so that ended it. And I'm like, you couldn't just do 30 minutes. After all these years, you had to go back to that. And so that was that.
So I want to give you just a minute, Adam. Is there any project you want to pitch? Tell everybody about your podcast and the appearances you got coming up.
Sure. The Movie Crypt is on every podcast place that you would listen to podcasts. We've been doing it every Monday for 11 years. We've never missed a Monday with a new episode, even if Monday is on like Christmas or New Year's Day. I think we just recorded episode 565. Wow. So, it's a great show. Over the last like 4 years, I think we're mainly behind a Patreon. The first hour is free for everybody, but I don't know if like our show is really good and we get really good guests, and if it's worth paying a quarter for a week. So, but first hour is free, but for $1 a month, you get the full versions. But yeah, so I do that every week. And what else? I'm going to be at Horror Hound weekend this coming weekend, which is March 22nd through 24th, I think. I'm going to be at Astronomicon in Michigan in mid-April, New Jersey HorrorCon the weekend after that, Texas Frightmare, Monsterpalooza. What else am I going to be at? There's another one. I can't read it from here. And then Scarefest. But I so rarely get to do conventions. So this is the only good thing to happen because of the strike and COVID ruining everything. And I hope I don't have to cancel any. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I should hope I have to cancel some because that will mean something will have moved into production. But I never believe anything until it's finished shooting that it's actually going to happen. So we'll see. And I've got like 5 different movies and a series that, who knows, maybe you'll be seeing them soon, maybe never. I have no idea. Something will happen. But and the next Hatchet comic comes out, I think in like 2 months or something like that. And then there's like a Hatchet box set that I didn't mention here because I can't talk about it yet. Oh, and my movie Spiral is getting re-released in September, I believe. It's remastered with new special features and stuff. That's the one that came out almost at the same time as Hatchet because they were made at the same time. And then I think next year is Ding Up the Marrow's 10th anniversary. When that had come out, Alex Pardee, the artist whose artwork the movie was based on, we had toured with the film and the art exhibit. But back then thankfully we sold out everywhere we went, but most people didn't know what the movie was yet. It's obviously gained a big following now. So we're hoping that we get to do that again with the art exhibit. So all the people that were late to the party will now get to see it that way. But we'll see. But yeah, lots going on. I just, I know I wish people, I'm sure there's people who wish I could say this is coming out on this date, but even if I knew, I probably wouldn't tell you. So.
Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Great interview. Chad and Joanne knocked it out of the park. David Naughton will be here next week. David Naughton from American Werewolf in London. We'll see you then.